Humanity has always taken immense pride in its intellect. Humans built aqueducts, they mapped the stars, they placed silicon processors inside handheld glass rectangles to argue about politics across continents. But beneath that thin veneer of self-proclaimed intellectual supremacy lies a psychological operating system so remarkably fragile that a single spike in stress can cause hundreds of grown adults to dance until their hearts explode. Or, as historical records confirm, spend 3 weeks meowing in unison at a French convent. Today, we examine the most absurd psychological glitch in human history: Mass Psychogenic Illness. Let us set the stage. It is July of 1518 in the imperial city of Strasbourg. The streets were narrow, damp, and smelled precisely like a 16th century human settlement, which is to say, rotten cabbage, unwashed wool, and existential dread. The local population was enduring a nightmare decade. Harvests had failed, grain prices were soaring, syphilis, smallpox, and leprosy were creeping through the alleyways. The atmospheric stress was suffocating. And then came Frau Troffea. Frau Troffea was an ordinary woman, living a quiet, miserable medieval existence. But on a sweltering July afternoon, she stepped out of her house, walked into the center of a cobblestone street, and began to dance. There was no music, no festive band, just a silent street, and a woman stomping her feet, twisting her torso, and flailing her arms with frantic energy. Her husband begged her to stop. She didn't. Hours passed, her dress soaked through with sweat. Her feet bled through her worn leather shoes. Night fell. She collapsed from exhaustion, twitched on the cobblestones for a brief rest, and the moment dawn broke, stood right back up to resume her violent tango. Now, if a cat sees another cat acting completely unhinged, we walk away. We do not join in unprovoked chaos. But humans possess a peculiar psychological vulnerability known as social contagion. One person panics, and the collective human brain whispers, "We should panic too." Within a week, 30 people were dancing alongside Frau Troffea. Within a month, the crowd had grown to 400. They were not smiling. Eyewitnesses described dancers weeping, screaming, and begging for mercy while their legs continued to kick against the cobblestones in a trance-like state. And this is where 16th century human leadership truly shined. City authorities assembled the finest minds of the era: local physicians, guild masters, and magistrates. A rational species might isolate the sufferers or provide quiet rest, but medical theory at the time revolved around the four humors, the absurd belief that human health was governed by black bile, yellow bile, phlegm, and blood. By the way, medieval doctors also believed powdered mummy dust cured headaches, and that holding a dead pigeon against your chest drew out fever. So, expectations were already in the gutter. The physicians declared the dancers were suffering from overheated blood, and their official medical prescription? More dancing. They concluded that the only way to purge overheated blood was to force the victims to dance continuously, day and night, until the fever burned itself out. So City Hall funded the world's first state-sponsored rave. They rented 2 massive grain markets, built a wooden stage in the square, and hired professional fiddlers, drummers, and pipers to supply a high-tempo beat 24 hours a day. They even hired stout laborers to hold up semi-conscious dancers by their armpits so their bloody feet could keep dragging across the floor. The result was predictable carnage. When a human body dances for 15 hours straight in 90-degree heat without water, organs fail. At the height of the epidemic, up to 15 people were dying every single day from heart attacks, strokes, and exhaustion. Musicians played upbeat melodies while bodies collapsed dead onto the slippery wooden stage. Eventually, after 2 months, authorities realized their dance party wasn't curing anyone. They banned public music, tore down the stage, and hauled the survivors in wagons to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus. Saint Vitus was a 4th century martyr whose name became attached to nervous twitching centuries later. They gave the survivors red shoes, splashed them with holy water, and gradually, as the trance broke, the dancing stopped. Now, one might assume this was merely medieval superstition. But Mass Psychogenic Illness doesn't care about the century. And dancing isn't even the strangest way the human mind crashes. Take, for instance, a 15th century convent in France. A group of nuns were living under strict isolation, bound by vows of silence, manual labor, and constant religious anxiety. One afternoon, a young nun stood up in the dining hall and inexplicably began to meow. Not a polite meow, a deep, persistent, feline screech. Within 48 hours, several other nuns joined in. Within a week, the entire convent gathered every single afternoon, from 2 to 5 o'clock, to meow at the sky in unison. The chorus of human meowing became so deafening that nearby villagers panicked, suspecting demonic possession. The local militia had to be summoned. Soldiers lined the convent walls with leather whips and announced that any nun who meowed after sunset would be beaten severely. Surprisingly, the threat of physical violence instantly cured the feline transformation. When a cat experiences overwhelming stress, we find a quiet cardboard box, curl into a tight ball, and sleep for 16 hours. It is practical, dignified, and hurts no one. But human psychology is far more fragile. Under enough pressure, the human mind struggles to hold its own weight, sometimes choosing to dance until the heart gives out, or to meow at the clouds just to feel heard. Perhaps that is the quiet tragedy of human history. For all your grand architecture and lofty philosophies, your mind remains a delicate instrument, easily overwhelmed by the weight of its own world. Keep your feet still, avoid city-sponsored dance halls, and if your neighbor starts meowing at the moon, perhaps give them some space. Stay cynical, and I'll see you next time on The Judgmental Kitty.